pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Welcome to the, what's today's date? February 26th meeting of the Philipstown Town Board. Just to go over where we've been and where we're headed, this is a continuation of the workshop that we had on February 19th to discuss the town's response to the DGEIS proposed by Hudson Highland Fjord Trail. This is not a public hearing. This is a workshop designed for the Town of Philipstown Town Board with our consultants to come up with a final draft for our response to the DGEIS. So I'm going to try to work through this as quickly as possible. Then I'm also going to propose at the end that we eliminate the letters DGEIS from the alphabet because I've about had it with hearing them. So we've all worked hard. The town board has worked hard. The staff here at Town Hall has worked hard. Our consultant, the conservation board, the community has sent dozens of letters to us. I appreciate the input. Did I read them all? No. I mean, we were getting them as late as yesterday, 100-page documents. It's kind of impossible. But I heard the term today, drinking water out of a fire hose is kind of the way we were getting information. So we've done the best we can to put together a proposal that hopefully will be adopted by the town board this evening, and then we can move on from there. So I'd like to keep it all cordial. We will have differences of opinions, there's no doubt about it. It's not a personal matter. We work all the time, we work on things, we disagree. That's part of the process. But I would like to begin with working on the conservation. I know it's a switch from the way the agenda reads, but as a courtesy to the Conservation Board, we did get an update from Andy this afternoon at around 5 p.m. As the board had a chance to take a quick look at it, it's mostly the same. There is some highlighted changes that have been proposed. I appreciate the work that the Conservation Board did, as well as Max, who is our Natural Resources Officer, has chimed in on this. I think it is an in-depth, professional approach to the DGEIS. I think it comes up with some unique alternatives to what's been proposed, and I would like to see Nancy Stoner and State Parks review this as part of the DGEIS review. So I will open up the discussion to the town board. Anybody interested in making a comment?
I did read the documents, and I just want to say I want to thank you, Supervisor Van Tassel, and all my colleagues on the board, and Steve Marino, who put this together in short time frame.
The Conservation Board this evening.
But the Conservation Board, I don't have any additional comments on that.
So we'll get to the rest of it.
Sure.
But I'd like to address the Conservation Board report first. Andy, would you like to stand and say anything about the changes? Is there any particular?
I think the major change was essentially, there was a correction. Number one, the boardwalk, we had the wrong length. But it was more that I don't think we were making it clear enough. We're not against the Fjord Trail at all. It's more that what's happening south, we're not convinced it's necessarily been thought out well enough, nor have the impacts been thought out well enough. And maybe I'm a scientist, sometimes you need a proof of concept. So if we stop the trail at a certain point temporarily, and I think it's what Steve goes into too, let's see what happens, you know, and see the data there. And then we did have a discussion with Evan Thompson, who manages the Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve. I don't think he liked my comment or Jason's, which I had a very nice phone conversation with him, and I said, I didn't mean to say it that way. What the Conservation Board meant to say, and we did change the language slightly, is that the park has just been inundated with visitors. You know, 500,000 is incredible per year. And even with the staff that he has extended and he's brought in volunteers, I think 2 volunteer groups, it's still not enough. So those were the changes that we made.
I would like to address Evan as well. I did an email, I did speak with him, and I had an email conversation with him. We couldn't be more fortunate than to have somebody as qualified and as energetic and as knowledgeable of the community and the trails as Evan Thompson is. I have witnessed it firsthand on rescues. If you ever want to go for a hike with somebody who's a savage, try to stay with Evan Thompson. It's nearly impossible to keep up with him in the trail. He literally swam to a stranded swimmer in the Hudson River with a raft and brought the person back to shore and turned him over to the police. So that's his dedication. So there's nobody questioning his dedication or his ability. But again, I understand your point that he is understaffed. There's no doubt about it. For the amount of, as he quoted, it's 10,000 acres and nearly 500,000 people per year visiting the park. And of course, it will increase regardless, one way or the other.
Very difficult terrain acres to deal with. And, you know, we were hoping in the comment as it goes through state parks that hopefully it would highlight like perhaps some more resources yet.
And prior to 2018, as he noted in his description, there was no assistance.
That's what I was gonna bring up. Before that, he was basically on his own, really.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
he had people, but at the time he get people that were up all different, like, there were different areas.
Right.
So, prior to that, he really was kind of on his own, so gotta give Evan a lot of credit. He's been in the community, I know
Absolutely.
Evan for quite some time now. He's very knowledgeable, as Johnny said, especially, it's good, we're lucky to have him, so.
Yes, agreed.
And his staff.
And his staff, yeah.
Great.
They're doing great. Thank you.
I
Thank
also wrote an email follow-up to Evan to that, and he's saying, you know, kind of clarifying how much, you know, I appreciate the trail work that him and volunteers do, and that the comment was more intended at the amount of visitors and the capacity to handle them, so.
I will admit, 2 Saturdays ago, I called Evan on my cell phone. I was not lost on Breakneck, but I needed a little assistance finding the right trail to get back where I parked. So, and he was able to give me that over the phone, so it's much appreciated.
And you did clarify about the emergency services, that they are providing significant coverage, that it's improved. It wasn't.
Absolutely. The lost hiker calls no longer go to 911. They go, well, if you call 911, State Parks is the first to respond. It's injured hikers that they do dispatch the local emergency service. But State Parks, every rescue that I've been on over the last few years, State Parks has a crew there, so.
And the amount of calls that the emergency services teams have gotten over the last several years has dropped dramatically since then.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from the town board in reference to the point of view produced by the Conservation Board?
I'm just gonna make a quick comment that I respect that the Conservation Board is an independent, you know, board from the town board and has a lot of expertise. And so their opinion as an independent board, I respect, and I think that's how we're approving it. And also, I think, Andy, the comments you just made about kind of, you know, that the, you know, thinking about it as a pause to look at the proof of concept and real data sounds more in line with what we've discussed as a town board, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's what we had intended, but we were probably a little too harsh when we put it together in the wording. So, I do.
Anything else? Thank you. Nothing else from the town board? Okay, my suggestion to the town board is that we move, and it would be a roll call resolution, to have the Conservation Board submit their POV directly to Nancy Stoner at New York State Parks for review as part of the DGEIS review. So, any questions? So, Tara, do you want to read off the resolution?
Sure. This is a resolution approving the submission of the Town of Philipstown Conservation Board point of view on the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail. Whereas the Town of Philipstown Town Board has reviewed the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail Draft Generic Environmental Impact Statement, DGEIS, and whereas the Town Board had agreed at the year-end meeting of December 11th, 2024, that it was appropriate for the Philipstown Conservation Board to review the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail DGEIS and submit comments per the guidelines of the State Environmental Quality Review Notice of completion of a draft DGEIS notice of public hearing dated December 4th, 2024, and whereas the Conservation Board has prepared a document entitled Hudson Highland Fjord Trail Draft Generic Environmental Impact Statement, Town of Philipstown Conservation Board Point of View. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town hereby approves the submission of the Town of Philipstown Conservation Board Hudson Highland Fjord Trail Draft Environmental Impact Statement, Town of Philipstown Conservation Board Point of View document.
Okay, can I get a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilwoman Farrell.
I am going to vote no because I had comments last week, and I've had comments at every meeting that I believe I did my own review of the document and my own research, and I have over 30 years of experience at the federal, state, and local government level. And I have seen a lot of projects, and I have been in a lot of parks and visited trails across the country. I'm inspired by the words of President Theodore Roosevelt. The fundamental idea behind the parks is that the country belongs to the people, that it is in the process of making for the enrichment of the lives of all of us. And the Hudson Highlands parks also belong to the people. I think there are comments that we do agree on in some parts of the review that Stephen Marino did, and I understand the purpose of the secret process. The DGEIS is meant to be conceptual, and there are questions that must be addressed and answered. But I think that the answers I have and that I'm seeking are to address the people who are aging now, who have disabilities, who have young children. They don't have time to wait 2 or 5 more years. I've been waiting 22 years myself, and I live in the village of Cold Spring, and I walk the village every day. I speak to the constituents in the village. There are a lot of people that want to have something and some access, and Fair Street may never be fixed. In the review, there are a lot of what ifs. What if this happens and what if that happens? And that's true, things may happen. And there may be thousands of visitors. But I saw a similar park here, the West Point Foundry Preserve, where I see a lot of residents walking and tourists. And while there may be thousands of people in the village on a weekend, they're not all on the trails at the same time or in the park at the same time. Dockside actually might draw people from Main Street and also from Fair Street, and we don't have a solution to Fair Street. That's a big problem. There's a large condominium there with 62 families, and the president of that association came out in support of the Dockside connector. I want to still see more details on that, but I do think we do need to start in Cold Spring. That's the first sign I saw when I entered the village, was there's going to be a fjord trail connecting Cold Spring and Beacon, and hasn't happened in 22 years. So I really don't want to wait 2 or 3 or 4 more years. And I don't think the constituents I spoke to over the past week, they don't want to wait much longer either for it to start. So I'm sorry, I'm voting no.
You're voting no on the Conservation Board point of view? Because that's what we're voting on, correct?
Yes, because I don't agree with the recommendation that they're making, but I do want to thank the Conservation Board for their review. I respect their expertise, and we can agree to disagree, but thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy, I appreciate it. Councilman Angel.
I'm going to vote aye. I made it clear at the last workshop that I may not agree with all of the recommendations in the Conservation Board, but I do respect the experience and the expertise of the Conservation Board as an independent agency, and they've done a great deal of work, and I think they have the right to submit their perspective independently from the town board into the secret comment process.
Thank
So
you.
I vote aye. Yep.
Thank you, Jason. Councilman Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilwoman Cotter.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Andy. I appreciate it, and thank you to Max. The next thing I would like to discuss is I did a draft letter today, which was circulated to the town board in reference to it basically becoming a cover sheet or a presentation that would go ahead of the response from our professional consultant, Tim Miller. So I will read that. The board has a copy of it. Dear Ms. Stoner, it is the majority opinion of the town board of the town of Philipstown that the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail stops at the southern end at Little Stony Point. We propose you consider a purposed pause of an extended period of time, preferably two years, with all other improvements in place. This would include, but not limited to, all the parking improvements, breakneck station improvements, visitor center at Dutchess Manor, and proposed infrastructure in and around the town of Philipstown and the villages of Cold Spring and Nelsonville. We also propose that HHFT, along with New York State Parks, provide all emergency services needed to service the trail and subsequent additional tourists adequately. We feel that the variable potential impacts to the town require this pause, and it will provide us with a real-time view of the volume of visitors and validity of impact measures. We feel that prior to potentially proceeding south to Dockside, that measured benchmarks of vehicle and pedestrian traffic to the area be established for guidance of officials in that decision. We also request that you review the statements of Tim Miller Associates, and we should have the word included, and the Town of Philipstown Conservation Board, and address the questions and alternative ideas they have proposed. The Conservation Board, as well as Riverkeeper, have encouraged avoiding overwater construction in the Hudson River and suggest alternative routes be reviewed. The Town Board is appreciative of the already made and proposed investments being made by New York State Parks and HHFT to assist with over-tourism in the area. The Town Board is tasked with ensuring safety and quality of life of our residents, and we have become a community divided over this topic. We are fully aware it was not the intentions of HHFT or State Parks to divide the community, but it has. It has divided civic groups, municipal boards, and even friendships. We feel that the best route to unify the community is to agree to a compromise such as proposed. We ask that you take this proposal into consideration. Supervisor and Town Board, Town of Philipstown. So my proposal is to include that as a cover sheet, or any version of it that we come up with this evening as a cover sheet to Tim Miller's report. That is my heart speaking, and I'm appealing to Fjord Trail and State Parks to assist us in unifying this community. I haven't seen this community this divided since I can probably give you the year 11 or 12, 2011 or 2012. I've been on the town board. This is my 15th year. You all remember that time if you were here, and the players that were involved. That was the last time I recall this community being this divided. So as Jason and I discussed before, we want to put this behind us. The DGEIS needs to be put to bed. Our review of it, it's taken far too much time of mine, I'm sure the board, Village of Cold Spring, the Village of Nelsonville, and I'm sure Fjord Trail, who's here this evening, Peter Mullen's here this evening. We look to work with you to come up with a compromise that can unify the community. I understand your points, Judy, that people like to get on the trail and walk. As you know, I bike, I hike, I would love to bike it, but my concerns are that last section and the amount of tourism that it will draw. If you look at, there's several different versions of the numbers, but if you look at I pulled it out this afternoon, it's BFJ Planning, who was the consultant hired by Fjord to assist the data committee. The numbers are staggering, and not just with or without, but with, there's hundreds of thousands of new visitation based on their own figures. So if you go to the village, and I know you live in the village, and you all go to the village, but on a Saturday or Sunday, I can't imagine, if you do the math, you're looking at nearly doubling the population of the town on a peak day. So I can't imagine the village of Cold Spring, especially if the approach is at Dockside. I mean, frankly, I don't know what it would be even at Little Stony Point and how many people it's going to draw there. But I think at least it would keep the people out of Lower Main Street. The argument that it'll get them off Main Street and off Fair Street, they still have to, if you're coming by train or by car, you still have to access Dockside via Main Street, West Street, or New Street, which is already overwhelmed with people going to appreciate the river. So we're going to take people off of Fair Street and put them on New Street or West Street, which is already, if anybody tries to go to Moo Moo's, you'll see the crowds that are there on a
I do
Saturday.
see the lines at Moo views, but I do walk out to the open space there on Dockside
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
I
time,
agree.
almost
It's
every
beautiful.
day,
It's
and it's
beautiful.
beautiful, and even on weekends, and I don't feel it's overwhelmed, it's crowded, yes, but so are a lot of towns
So,
in the
but if you
Hudson
multiply it
Valley.
by 100 or 200,000 more, as per their own numbers, I just don't see. And if the impact measures, if the train station at Breakneck works, if Dutchess Manor works, we come back to the table, you know, if this is the proposal, come back to the table and say, let's see how we can bring the trail to Dockside in a reduced version, in full version. I mean, we have no crystal ball. We have no way to know. But again, I'll go back to, and Bobby said this a few times, you know, what's the rush? You know, build to Stony Point's going to be even that, you know, 2030. I certainly won't be up here. I don't know about the rest
I'm
of.
getting older.
Me too. But I mean,
That's
having-
that's the rush.
yeah, I get it. None of us are getting any younger, but it beats the alternative. The, you know, that proposal is 2030 at best, and, you know, what would it be? When would it be into Dockside? I don't know, but there's no way, and I've made this, it's too much, that section will be its own tourist draw in my view. And no matter how much we try to incentivize people to go north to Dutchess Manor, to Breakneck by train, which I think people will do, there's still going to be a draw to the village of Cold Spring, which I am reluctant to just, you know, sit back and say, have at it. So that's my point. I will open it up to discussion. We could go line by line through through Steve's report. And the changes, I know, Steve, you have adapted the report a little bit to include, you've all produced suggestions and questions, and I know, Steve, you have put some of them, or all of them, or most of them into the document itself.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, Town Board. Just as a reminder, Tim Miller Associates was hired by the Town Board to do a technical review of the DGEIS, which was accepted by OPRHP, Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, as the lead agency. They will ultimately make the final decision on this project. But as an involved agency, and certainly an interested agency in the secret process, the Town of Philipstown has afforded the opportunity to comment on the DGEIS. We were requested to do a technical review of the document. We have completed that review. You have before you a draft 18-page letter with comments, and generally our comments are technical comments. Our task of work was to review the document for technical issues as they stand under seeker and what would be applicable to having both the lead agency and the involved agencies being able to make a decision ultimately based on the information that's presented in the EIS. As you know, in this process, there's a draft GEIS, which is the one we're looking at now. Public hearings were held. Based on the comments at that public hearing and all the written comments that the state will be receiving, they will be producing an FGEIS. Please excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, so.
I thought it was the act.
Don't share, okay?
No. The state will be producing an FGEIS, which will have to go through each of the comments submitted by any parties that have submitted comments and answer those comments as part of the process.
Real quick, how much time do they have to produce that document? Is this-
They have as much time as it takes them to produce it, yeah. And generally, you know, I'm expecting, you know, we've commented on the DGEIS being 709 pages plus appendices. I don't expect that the FGEIS will be any less than that because, as you know, there's a number
Well,
of
and plus if it responds to each and every.
each and every comment. And, you know, and many of those comments will be in support, and those will be part of the record as well. Again, it wasn't our task to be in favor of or opposed to the Fjord Trail, rather to do a technical review of the document and find out if there were areas where more information should be provided in order to come up with a final impact assessment. They have to do what's called, you know, avoiding significant adverse impacts, providing alternatives and/or mitigation to offset any impacts that might be identified. Specifically, the types of things we looked at are traffic and congestion in the existing condition and proposed condition, the question of view sheds and how the structure of the Fjord Trail might affect view sheds, future maintenance of both the Fjord Trail as well as provision of EMS and police and fire, et cetera. Since a significant portion of the trail will be built in the river as currently proposed, we looked at the question of how that work would be done. We had a number of questions as to just, again, more details as to how that work would be completed. Question of contaminated sediments in the river, would they be resuspended during the process? How would that be contained, et cetera? Again, there was a number of issues in the book that we just felt weren't fleshed out quite enough. We acknowledge that this is a generic impact statement, which is usually more based on a concept rather than an actual plan, but after 14 years or however long it's been, I guess it's a little over 10 years that it's been in development, we did kind of expect a little bit more detail on some of the construction aspects and view shed aspects of the document. We talked about the secret process, whether there's a question that there wasn't enough consideration of the breakneck connector and the work being done at Dutchess Manor in the big picture of the process, what we call segmentation. We don't claim that there is segmentation, but we'd like a little bit more of an answer as to why that doesn't fall under it. Because in our experience, as a planning firm, segmentation is something we have to deal with on a regular basis, and to me, there's at least a question, based on the way the proposal has been moving forward, that segmentation under secret should have at least...
That was also brought to question by Steve Gabba as well.
Right, Steve Gabba, certainly as the town's attorney. Another area we discussed, and the board has already been discussing, is the idea of phasing and how the phasing is going to work in terms of the construction of the project and the improvements proposed with the project. We found it a little disconcerting that there were 4 phases proposed, but each of the phases started at approximately the same time. Generally, you complete one phase before you move on to the next phase, and the document presents all 4 phases happening concurrently. So we'd like to flesh that out a little bit better, and as the board has discussed, consider the possibility of doing several phases, seeing what the impacts were at that point, and then moving on to an additional phase. That's generally how a GEIS is handled. The generic nature means that certain thresholds should be met before the next phase occurs. Or that in future secret reviews, as long as certain thresholds aren't exceeded, then the project can go forward. But there wasn't presented in the document what those thresholds might be, how many trips per day would be up, if we expect a certain number of car trips per day, if they exceed that, what happens in terms of mitigation, et cetera. So we're just asking questions. Most of this is just asking questions for more clarification. And I think the final kind of bigger subject that we talked about is coordination with both the state and the other agencies that are involved. As you know, OPRHP is the lead agency under SEQR, will make the ultimate approval decision on the project, but MTA is certainly involved, DOT is involved, the villages and towns surrounding the project will be involved, and we looked at the question of coordination with those different agencies. HHFT is a private entity, so it's a private entity that will be doing work on state and private land, and we're just looking for more clarification on where that is, where the status of those discussions are in the process. Certainly MTA is a major player in the Philipstown portion, Philipstown and Cold Spring portion of it, and other than descriptions of steering committee meetings that were held a number of years ago, we don't have any sense as to where MTA is in the process right now. And it could very well be that there have been discussions where MTA is full speed ahead, but we don't have that information. So we're just looking for more information on that. And we think that the OPRHP as lead agency needs that kind of information in order to make their final decision. So as was mentioned, we had submitted a draft last week for the board's review. Based on our discussions with the board at the last work session and written comments I've gotten from each of the board members, we updated and revised our comment letter. We now have a total of 115 comments. Some of them are repetitive because some of the issues, we do our reviews generally chapter by chapter, and some of the same issues came up in several different chapters, so we just kind of kept moving along as far as like traffic is discussed and is discussed in several chapters. So it's brought up in several chapters. I did, to the extent I could, I incorporated the board members' comments. I either revised comments that were already there or added additional comments based on board members' concerns. So, and the one change, the major change I made is that now the comments are numbered from 1 to 115, so if there are specific questions on specific items, I thought it would be easier to go over it that way. And this way, when OPRHP gets the letter, as they address it in the FGEIS, they'll be able to do it point by point by point as they go, as they respond to the comments. And that's where we are today.
Can I ask a question?
Of course. Tara did distribute copies to all the board members for
Everybody's got.
for review. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that.
I'm just looking for, I put in a comment regarding for the school, Steve. So were we able to get any information on the impact that it will have during the school months for Haldane? And even in the summer months, right? Like we have the facilities and the individuals that work at Haldane, even during the summer. So if you can just help me out, like where can I find their answer for the emergency services that will be impacted during the school year? And then the services that would be impacted during the summer months, and the traffic that it will be, the congestion.
Yeah, there are
Because, I mean, I don't know if anybody's dropping their kids off at Haldane, but picking up or dropping off, I think I'm in the
I
only
did
one.
not watch or listen to the entire public hearing, but I know Haldane School was included in the
So,
comments. So
yes,
we could certainly find out what their comments were in reference to
can
questioning
reach out
that.
to
But
the
I know
board.
there's been public question about traffic concerns getting in and out of Haldane.
Which I think their biggest concern is during the school months, if there happens to be an emergency and we are inundated with tourists getting onto the promenade down at the bottom of Main Street, how are we going to get our emergency services in order to protect our children and the constituents of our community? Because a lot of the constituents which live in this community work at Haldane.
There is, I know, part of the master plan for the renovation in Haldane, there is a plan to remap the campus itself.
That phase is not actually in effect. Right now, we all just are, the
Right,
bill
not
just.
yet, but
No,
I know
not
I
yet,
know
but
it's
it is
being-
in there, but
No,
we
and
all
I
are.
understand, I used to drop my kid
Yeah,
off.
I mean, our pet taxes are going up for this referendum, which, by the way, so.
We have nothing to do with that.
We have nothing to do with that, but our school taxes are going up for that, but that's just the
So,
building phase,
do
but.
you-
the
Are you
cons-
proposing we add a question?
Yeah,
to-
well, I wrote, I don't know if he got it, but my
I did-
question
I did
is,
get it, Megan, and I don't know specifically, there are a lot of comments, obviously.
No,
I don't know
there's
specifically.
115, so
I
that's
did
a
specifically
lot.
add concern about school, traffic associated with the school, and I'm just trying to find it now.
Yeah, I did see something to that effect.
Yeah, I did, so it is in there for sure.
no, okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was addressed, because that is one of the major forefront questions that was brought to my attention from the school.
Yep.
So, regarding on the school board front and whatnot, so, wanted to make sure that that got,
It did, It's
addressed.
definitely in there somewhere.
As far as the MTA, Steve, since it is a state agency, I can't imagine that state parks would proceed and invest all this time. I mean, what is your opinion on whether or not they will come forward? I mean, and what level that decision would be made at by the MTA, because it is a state agency. I noted in the final statewide Greenway Trails Plan generic environmental impact statement that they do refer to MTA as well, and that was in April 2021. They also do include the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail in that report. So it is a priority in that report, and they do have other collaborations with the MTA on trails in the Hudson Valley.
Well, and again, I'm only asking the question because in the GEIS as it's currently, as it was accepted by OPRHP, they mention MTA on a number of occasions, but don't highlight what current discussions with MTA are. That's all. It's really the question of, MTA is certainly an involved agency. the Fjord Trail is not going to happen unless MTA is on board. But the question is MTA on board? Have there been discussions with MTA other than the original steering committee discussions? And I think OPRHP needs to know that this is a feasible plan before they go ahead and approve it.
But in your expert opinion, do you think that MTA will, or you just
Oh,
don't want to go?
I have
You
no
don't-
idea. MTA does what MTA does. I didn't think that congestion pricing was going to go into effect either, but it did, so.
And then it didn't.
And then, well, then maybe it didn't.
And then
who
it
knows?
did, and then it didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else from the board in reference to Steve's report? Go ahead.
I have a question, and it might actually not be something you can answer. It might be something that the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail could answer. What are you looking to give back to the community in order to put this Fjord Trail into effect?
I don't think it's fair to question them
No,
right
okay,
now.
so that's just a question that I have come up with. I'm just trying to figure out, you know.
I mean, they outline a number of mitigation measures in
Mm-hmm.
the plan, in terms of traffic improvements, in terms of parking improvements.
And they'd be paying for, I mean, again, I know it's not probably the time, but
Yeah, well,
Maybe
yeah,
these are
all that will be
things-
privately funded on the state
it
lands
would
and
be
MTA lands. But
the taxpayers.
taxpayers won't be paying for the trail.
Well, we do pay
That's pretty
state-
clear.
We do pay
Well,
state
yes.
tax, right.
And we
Well,
won't be paying for
well,
If
the,
state parks money is involved, it is
State parks money is involved, so
right.
taxpayer, yes.
But there is
the,
there is a private funding source
Okay.
as well, and they're looking to do,
And that
fundraising, so there, but ultimately, the responsibility and the ownership of it will be state parks,
okay.
so.
And that private funding is also going to be paying for the longevity of the
That's-
care of
that's our
this trail?
understanding, of course. That's our understanding.
That's what they're
according to
saying in
DGEIS.
this, okay.
But we're questioning that money stream as,
Yeah,
budgeting for it, and,
Absolutely,
if
that's-
there's a failure in here, if there's a failure,
Then
what is Plan B
Yeah.
to maintain?
Okay, I just wanted to actually make that clear on
Glad
camera.
Megan mentioned community benefits, because I think of the Fjord Trail, and I just think of it in a different way, because I view it as having community benefits, recreation benefits and other benefits, and also the benefits of a collaborative partnership. So what benefits do we lose if we don't do this, or if we delay it too much?
Lots of people that we can't handle.
Yeah, I don't think anything that the board is considering doing right now will delay anything, considering the process that they have to go through just in. I think it was very nice that we got the extension of the extra month in order to prepare the comments, because it really was necessary, because it is such a voluminous document. It came out just at the holidays. People weren't involved or invested in reviewing it at that time, so the extra month did provide the board and other communities.
I'm kind of thankful it was only 30. We did request 60, but I'm kind of thankful it was 30 at this point.
I think if it's longer, we might have.
Right,
It
right.
forces
exactly.
them to get it done, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, instead of
Thanks.
lingering over longer.
Jason?
I mean, I've got more general comments on the Fjord Trail, which I'll put to the side for now. I mean, just on the revised version, Steve, that Tim Miller has put forward. I mean, I think that we've had a really good process on this DGEIS document. I mean, we went through it pretty exhaustively last workshop, and we looked at everything that was in it. We were able to give you our comments and questions, which were then incorporated back into this document, so it's reflecting our views. And so I mean, I think my general point of view, not on the Fjord Trail writ large, which maybe we'll talk about, but on this document is, even if not all town board members agree on, all aspects of the Fjord Trail, this document asks a lot of detailed questions and asks for more detail on impact, environmental, community character, that is just going to make the project better, that is going to make the FEIS better, and that may lead to changes in the nature of the project. So I think all of us want a strong DGIS process, so this is as vetted as possible.
And ultimately, the
right?
end product, hopefully,
And
would be
the end
something
product,
better.
and so I'm just saying, I think it's been a good process, and I think that this document is a good comment, because it asks a lot of really good questions about more detail. Yeah.
Well, it's like anything else, the more eyes are on things, the things usually get improved, right? Yeah, people ask questions, that's how things go through the vet process and so forth like that. I mean, I've been in town board for 10 years. I've been going to every single planning board for the last 11 years. And we've had some major big projects, and public hearing comes in and makes a big difference of how things, the outcome of everything. So everyone looking at this, the more the better, the more input from everybody. And there's, there's always there's got to have some compromises. You can't get everything you want, and no one can get everything they want. We just got to come up with the best plan that everyone feels is best for the whole community involved.
There's not always popular opinions, but a lot of times there's good. I can recall sitting up here, and the town board was going to sell the little Dahlia house behind here, and somebody stood up and said, why don't you make that the building department? And we're like, oh. and there you have it. There's the building department. So, and that comment came out of the audience. I mean, it wasn't, favored, but all of a sudden, and it came, there it is. There is the building department. So, and it's working perfectly.
As someone who spent most of his professional life writing impact statements in addition to reviewing them, as irritating as seeker and the seeker process can be, because it can be daunting, public hearings can become very contentious. We've had police escorts at public hearings in the past. I mean, we've had those kinds of situations, but like you say, generally, 99% of the time, you end up with a better project at the end because of the process. Between public participation and public comment, additional review and detailed review of certain aspects of a project, how can things be changed, a real solid look at alternatives that might make or break a project and make it that much better. If you just think about that, in the end, the secret process really does work to make a project better.
Okay, anything else on this document?
No, I think it's a solid document, and I appreciate your review, Steve.
Thank you very much.
General statements, I will certainly open it up to general statements if you'd like to make a general statement.
This is the time for
Let's keep
these
it-
are like final.
Under an hour.
No, this is brief. I mean, because it feels like a little bit like.
So it's not brief. Okay, great.
You mean when someone says it's brief? Yeah, I'm just gonna. It's just gonna be brief.
This isn't gonna hurt much.
Let me just break out. No. I mean, it feels like to me that this is the. We've all said the whole time that the town board doesn't really have any jurisdiction over the Fjord Trail. Right, okay, so there's a question, and that this public comment on the DGEIS is kind of our most impactful thing that we're gonna do. So kind of after this, obviously it's an issue of concern, but I guess my general statement would just be this, because we've all talked about it a lot. I mean, I wanted to, I wanted to make clear that we have different opinions. I personally support the Fjord Trail. I support it as a concept. I support it for a number of reasons, because I believe in trail accessibility, because I believe that there's many people in this community who want safe places to bike and walk of all ages. I believe it because I think there's a lot of communities around us that don't have access to nature. I work with those communities. And I also believe it, and this is where, you said, John, like there's been arguments amongst friends. I've had these arguments. Like, I also believe that, climate change, when we have the opportunity to build infrastructure that is non-motorized, we should take it. And then also that you protect what you love, and people need to be out in nature more. People need to be out near the river more. And the more people who do that, the more there are people who are going to protect what they love. So I believe in all of that. At the same time, and I do realize people say, this is a huge project, a lot of money behind it. There's going to be a lot of environmental impact, and that's true, right? And so even with all of that, with me who cares about climate change, I still think the benefits possibly could be greater than the impact. Do I think that if it's possible, like with the comments in this DGEIS, to build it in a way that's smaller, simpler, and has less environmental impact, should that be done? Yes, it should definitely be done. But at the same time, we all recognize there's a lot of overvisitation, there's a lot of unknowns and assumptions around this project. You can look in the DGEIS and say, look, we're going to assume a 1% visitor growth per year. There's all of these different assumptions. It's very hard to predict out into the future and know that you're going to be right. What happens if this is built and it increases by a magnitude the amount of visitors. So I guess I would say, like, you know, and John, I think you proposed this kind of common ground amongst all this for the first time that I heard, which was, okay, let's pause. Let's look at the data before it gets built down into Cold Spring and see if what it's promising to do, which is make some major investments to mitigate visitors, works. And if it does, then to come back to the conversation and continue it down into the village. And so I just think, like, I still, upon all this reflection that we've done over time, even though I'm clearly in support of it, I recognize all of the assumptions and all the unknowns and all of the potential negative, right? Because you can't predict things. And so I do just come back to this point that I do think is a common ground within the community of, you know, it's going to get built. Let's look at if these mitigation measures are put in place. Let's ask the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail to focus in on making it be less car traffic by instituting some of these on-demand parking and reserve systems from the beginning, and then reevaluate it then. And I just think, you know, I hope that is a point we've all come to that can allow the community to move forward, right, and come back to it in the future.
So, just to clarify, and I also support the Fjord Trail. There's no doubt about it. And I'll say it as an emergency service responder, I think they bring a lot of resources. But I agree with you, the unknown, not having a crystal ball as to, you know, what greenhouse gases. People are coming by car, they're coming by train. You know, hundreds of thousands of people are gonna have an impact on our environment. They're eating, they're drinking, completing the nitrogen cycle here. I mean, it's a circle. So a volume of people is definitely going to have an impact. So, if I understand you, you do support the Little Stony Point pause, and with a purpose pause with the other stuff in place. So you would accept the opening statement that I have prepared.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in favor of the open statement, as you know, and I noted this too, as long as it's clear that what we're saying is we don't all think it should stop at Little Stony Point forever, but in order to have this pause and look at the data before deciding if it moves.
Addressed it as a purposed pause.
Yeah.
It's not stop
Yeah.
and not go further.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Judy?
As I said earlier, I'm concerned about delaying, excuse me, or pausing. I appreciate Jason's comments, and I appreciate all the work that's been done by all the board members. I know a lot of time's been invested in this, but I do think there are a lot of people in the community that have been waiting a long time, and I think it's something that we need to work together to make happen and to increase accessibility to the waterfront. And I think that this is not, it's a concept. You know, the DGEIS is supposed to be conceptual, as Steve said, but I think there are a lot of details that can be filled in, but I don't want to make a definitive decision to stop or delay or to pause it. I want to see things move forward. I want to see progress. I'm excited. Actually, I've been excited for 22 years about this prospect, and so are many residents who've been in this town a lot longer than me have told me. So I'm happy, you know, to see it move forward, and hopefully with the questions and comments that the board and Tim Miller have provided, that there will be answers, but I do not support pausing it.
So you would not support it? And, I mean, I'm proposing attaching this letter to the document, so I guess we will do a resolution at the end, either accepting it, if the rest of the board feels the same, including the letter, and you would have the process of just voting no or in opposition to it. So I appreciate your opinion.
I mean,
Thank-
there are a lot of fears in the world, and, you know, I don't want to, I'm a fan of presidents, I guess, presidential quotes, but FDR said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yes, there are, of course, going to be problems with this project, and I think we can work them out as it progresses, but I don't want to suggest that it be delayed.
Okay, Bobby?
I support the trail as well, but I think pausing it from Little Stony Point to Dockside is a prudent thing to do. I mean, again, what's the rush? I've been saying, what's the rush all these years, 20 years into this. When I first got on the board, one of the first projects Richard Shea appointed me to was, hey, Bob, go down there and see what it's going to take to get the fence at Mayor's Park pushed back 10 feet so we can build the sidewalk there to get this trail going. And that's 10 years now. I started the process and it didn't last very long. We didn't, as you can see, we didn't get too far with that. So supporting a pause, to me, is the best thing for everybody at this particular point. You know, also too, my concern about a boardwalk over water, 10 to 12 feet wide, when you're gonna have people, bikes, children, wheelchairs, stuff like that. That's not really big. If you've ever been up to the rail trail, up in Dutchess County and so forth like that, that's 20, 30 feet wide. You got bikers coming on, and you know there's gonna be people with motorized bikes, electric bikes on this thing somewhere along the line. So that's my biggest concern there, is safety for that one piece, especially over a boardwalk over the water. And also, too, who's, during this whole process, who's gonna be really monitoring what's going on there? Are they gonna be doing water samples, this type of sample? Who's gonna be doing all that work? That's not really addressed that I could see in this here as well. Again, I'm for the trail, but I think asking for a pause between Little Stony Point and Dockside Park isn't really much to ask for. So I support this 100%.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with, I don't support the trail, because when this started, a lot of you who are in the audience now know that this started just what it said, as a trail. And now it's become what I tell my kids, it could be the eighth wonder of the world, obviously being facetious. However, with that being said, I do support John's letter stating the phasing aspect of this trail. See where we're at with each phase, starting in Dutchess County, starting then creeping towards Dutchess Manor, and then creeping towards Breakneck. I drive Route 9D 7 days a week. I am fully invested in the community. I have 4 young children who are at this school, and I am in town, and I'm in those trails. And Judy, you made a statement about the West Point Foundry. I'm on that trail 4 or 5 days a week. That trail is just what it is, a trail. There's no scooters on there. It's not out into the river. It's not affecting the marsh. It's not affecting the water. It's not affecting the environment. So this point, hold on, you already spoke.
Well,
Now,
you mentioned
no,
my
you spoke
name.
now. I'm
But you
actually,
mentioned my
but
color.
Judy, you already had your turn. So
Okay.
being respectful, now it's my turn. So do I agree with John's letter? Yes, 100%. I agree with the vision that John has. I agree with that 100% in phases. What worries me is putting this trail down at Dockside and a number of individuals that will be coming to Cold Spring. Somebody made a statement, I think it was you, John, that said Cold Spring has its own visitors. People come to Cold Spring to come to Cold Spring. And then you have the people who come to get off the train in Cold Spring. And now, guess there's a train stop up to go hiking. So to put the trailhead at the beginning of our beautiful landscape that we all moved here for, and I'm sure some of you are born and raised here and some of you have moved here, I think it's really important that the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail really sits back and thinks about the individuals and the constituents that live here, the children that live here, the effect that it will have on the environment and the community by itself. So as we go through and Tyra reads the resolution, yes, I do agree, and I will be voting yes to John's letter.
Judy?
Just to clarify my point about the West Point Foundry Preserve, it's a trail before it was opened in 2017, where before it was even developed, people were concerned that there would be overwhelming traffic and thousands of people, and that has not materialized. It is true, it's not over the river, but it has actually improved the Constitution Marsh area. And as far as, I agree, there are thousands of tourists coming in off the train or driving here, but Cold Spring is on the map. It's a destination. The genie's not going back in the bottle, and we haven't done anything about it, and we don't have the resources as a town or village to invest in mitigating
Right, we don't have
the
the
issues.
resources.
But we can't put the tourists back. We can't put up a gate or a wall. They're coming anyway. That's my point.
One other statement, you know, this has been said to me by a number of people, the Fjord Trail is great for the public in general of New York State, but our job is to make sure that it's right for the residents of the town of Philipstown and the village of Cold Spring. So, you know, we are more than just a destination. We're home. People, this is our home. And you're right, we do have tourists coming regardless. And the meeting that we had with Fjord, and the public meeting at Haldane, when they showed the graph of the number of people that are coming, and Jason, you pulled it today. And that's on the lower side. If you compare that to BFJ, it's BFJ, there's too many initials, BFJ and ORCA and the data committee, I think, you know, the numbers are even worse. So we do need resources, and I think the compromise at Little Stony Point will give us the resources. You know, I'm suggesting that the improvements on Fair Street be made, maybe a sidewalk or a bike trail on 9D. 9D is a 60-foot right-of-way, and it's owned by New York State. Put a bike trail, put a walking trail on 9D. Keep it going, go right to the Bear Mountain Bridge. You know, allow it accessibility right through Garrison too. I mean, we had the Trails Committee here propose a trail to the rec center, from Haldane to the rec center. So there is other possibilities that in the water. I understand the draw of the Hudson River. We're all here because of the Hudson River. My family came on the Hudson River, so that's how far back it went. But and there is, you know, the ADA part of it. The only flat land to make this trail is in the river. I mean, let's face it. The rest of the community is full of hills. So to make it ADA compliant, it's in the water. But, you know, is the rest of the village ADA? Can you get to it under those guidelines? I don't think you can access it under those guidelines. So maybe by train to Breakneck, you could get off the train. So that's where I am. I think the compromise will bring the resources that we're looking for. It's also going to ease some of the concerns of overwhelming the village of Cold Spring. And I'm sure the village of Cold Spring has their own views on this. I'm not speaking for them, but they are part of the town of Philipstown. So it is our responsibility to make sure that the residents of Cold Spring are comfortable with our view. So that's all I'm going to say on it.
And I just want to further
Sure.
just recommend a tourist management committee. Maybe we could
You're the
get some
chair.
volunteers. Because I think, yes,
You
I'd
could be the
be happy to
chairperson.
help with
There you
that.
go.
But we do need parks and Hudson Highland Fjord Trail. Think about a reservation system or some kind of ticket system. I've been to other trails across the country and national parks where they do have reservations and tickets and things of that nature to help manage the tourism.
You know, the other part of the pause, and I saw this happen at Walkway Over the Hudson, which is also often brought into this process. When I first started biking on Walkway Over the Hudson, it was a mob scene. I mean, you could not move. Last summer, you could have shot a cannon across that thing. So I think the popularity, not saying that this will happen, but the popularity over time will diminish. You know, the crowds would hopefully diminish. And the phasing of the process I think will help ease some of that, you know, demand that, oh my God, look at this new park that we know if State Parks is investing this much money in, they're gonna promote. It's gonna be on those commercials. I Love New York commercials. You're gonna see the Fjord Trail, which if I was the governor, I would be doing the same thing. I mean, it's a legacy project for her and for the state. So I think the more we pause it and segment it and present it in a slower pace, the better it will be for easing that, you know, when a new restaurant opens, when a new store opens, you know, there's that rush. So I mean, I think I've said enough. I will leave it up to the board. Do we want to entertain public comment? I'm not
Yes.
personally.
Yes, I think the public should.
Okay,
Well,
so-
if we do, it's got to be limited to 2 minutes. And if someone already said something similar to what you're saying, you're done. We're not hearing things twice.
Let's keep it to a minimum, so. Who's got a clock? Tara, do you want to keep time? I don't think we're going to have any issues with people talking over 2 minutes, will we?
No, I'll tell you to stop, and then you won't have to.
Anybody interested in speaking? Yes, ma'am. Could you come up to the microphone, please?
And you need to
Other-
state your name. I'll
Otherwise,
put my
we're,
2 minutes on.
I wasn't expecting this to be a long comment. My name's Mei Yi.
Sorry?
My name's Mei Yi,
Okay.
and I live on 9D, Route 9D. The sidewalks on Route 9D, like, we would love that. How do we propose that? You know, we have these ideas about what can help, what can be other alternatives, just kind of latching on to that. What do I do with that? Who do I talk to? You know, who do we suggest these things that could provide some of
that
the,
alternate was, you know, we have proposed alternates through the Village of Cold Spring and the Town of Philipstown, and that is included, so.
so it's in the recommendations to the,
Yes, ma'am.
the park.
To
and-
question alternatives, right.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Great, look, that was 41 seconds. Awesome.
Hi, Sheila. Are you going to speak? Oh, no, okay.
Letting her in.
Yes, definitely. State your name, ma'am.
How close do I have to go?
Go ahead, go.
Okay. Stephanie Hawkins. I live, wait, do I have to say my address?
No.
Oh, okay. Stephanie Hawkins. All right.
You're a Village of Cold Spring
Closer
resident.
to the microphone.
We're not counting this towards your 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This is so awkward. I actually live in the town of Philipstown now.
Okay.
But as you know, I have a house in Cold Spring. I want to thank you, John, for actually emphasizing and calling attention to the fact that this is a home and not a destination. I think people lose kind of sight of that, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for this attraction. And I think that there's a lot of like chatter that sort of misleads people to think that we don't have access to the river. We have access to the river here in our community. And there's access to the river in Beacon, which is another one of the proposed hubs for this project. And in Beacon, I've gone and I've walked that quite recently, and there's a lot of access, direct access to the water there. It's flat. It is, much of it is ADA compliant. It's all connected. There's like 2.25 miles. I clocked it on my Fitbit. So I think it's worth like kind of clarifying and pushing back on some of these false narratives around, you know, this sort of idea that people like to say there's no access, people can't get to the water. It's just not true. And I think that there's also enthusiasm for like saying, oh, I want to get to it, or I want that thing because I can't have it right here where I'm sitting. You know, we hear this about parking. People are like, oh, I can't park right next to where I want to be. Well, that doesn't mean there's not parking in the town. It just means you have to walk a little. Anyway, thank you for calling attention to the fact that this is our home.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Again, under 2 minutes.
Anyone else?
Hello, I think you all know me, Dave Morandi. I live in the town of Philipstown. Last week, to piggyback on what Stephanie just said about water accessibility, and that's one of the narratives I'd like to promote, that we don't have that. So we ventured down to Long Dock Park this weekend, and this past weekend, and, you know, with our little Fitbits, walked from Pete Seeger Park along that whole area, which can be made accessible, ADA accessible if they wanted to, a little bit of improvement there. A short walk will get you to Long Dock Park, which you can go along the edge of the shore, the whole shore there. Then you can hike all the way down to Dennings Point, which unfortunately was closed because of the eagles nesting till March. And that brings you to the bay there, that a little overlook, which is a fantastic view down the Hudson. And that's approximately 2 miles, you know. If you added Dennings Point in there, if that's open, you'd probably at least have 3.5 miles. If you come to Cold Spring, you have the whole riverfront, you have Dockside Park, you have Little Stony Point. You're gonna add another 2 or 3 miles, or at least 2 miles, I would guess, maybe, on there. And my point is to say that there's no water, or there's no access to the water, or somehow we're being deprived of our rights to the water because of the train or whatever is just false. It's like we have that there. Little Stony Point, they could make that ADA accessible if they wanted to. It was in the original plans back in 2007 or 17, whatever it was. And you could make that accessible, but that's not being done. Nothing's being done in those areas, which now are all of a sudden we have to have, and we're being denied that. So I really think, that's a false narrative. We do have the water. And so, a lot of that just goes away of the reason for this trail. It's already there. They show you renderings where they have fishermen and everyone else on the boardwalk. Can you imagine a fisherman casting on the boardwalk with people walking back and forth on that? Yeah, it looks romantic, it's beautiful, but that's propaganda. It's pushing, they are a developer pushing a project, and they're going to say everything good about it. They will tell you it'll be great, but this project is not going to be great if it's built in the river. It's going to be, as John said, a crown jewel of this trail. This is what it's about. It's an attraction that they are going to publicize, and people will be there. They're not going to spend whatever amount they are, which is another problem with the DGEIS or this whole project, is that we don't know what it's going to cost. You ask them, they won't tell you what it's going to cost because they don't know what it's going to cost. It's upward 2
minutes, sorry, I hate to cut you off. However, I have to be respectful to all the constituents.
We shouldn't, as elected officials, push something through because, I'm tired of this, or I want to get it done. We need to get this thing done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, Dave, thank you so much.
People do fish off the walk in
No,
Peekskill.
don't apologize, it's all right.
They do fish.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
I just wanted to add, Dave, if you go a little bit further to Madam Brett, that adds another mile from where, along Dock Park and everything else, so I'm up there a lot as well, so.
Anybody else like to speak?
You have like 3 seconds, 3, 2, all right, good job.
Megan's got the big hook.
I'm sorry, I hate to take over on this, but,
Gordon Robertson, 220 Main Street, for about 55 years.
You're not that old.
No.
don't give away your
I only
age.
came in third grade, so I'm not local. This project has been the most disingenuous thing I have ever seen. I could start at the beginning 10 years ago at every step, and everybody who's been involved to a certain degree has either had their eyes closed or they weren't looking deep enough. My wife and I even showed up at the Fishkill board meetings talking about Duchess Manor and how that, and then they were saying, their attorneys, the Fjord Trail's attorneys showed up, and they were saying that this has no connection with the Fjord Trail. So I don't know how we can connect and say Duchess Manor's included this when they were openly, and their attorneys are telling, and they were keen enough to turn around. Fishkill board was keen enough to question them, but they had no grounds to move it forward. This is so disingenuous. I don't see where they've addressed cadmium. I don't see where they talked about coal tar, PCBs. This is an attraction they were building. This is not a trail. This was not what was originally thought of or promoted in the community 10 years ago when everybody had good faith in all you guys, all the politicians. We had faith in you that we came 10, 15 years ago. You put it on, this is what we're doing, we're working on trails, here's $50,000, we're going to build a sidewalk. Everybody was on board. We don't have a tourist problem. We've always been invited, we've always had tourists. Ever since I was a kid, people have been hiking here. We have an attraction problem. You're building an attraction. When I was on the board in the village, Anthony Phillips and I, at one point, we were taking the lease over. We wanted to take the lease on Dockside over, which we returned to the state because the states, we wanted to put some moorings out there. They said that same property that they were talking about building on was so sensitive that we couldn't put mushrooms and
I'm giving you an extra
moorings
10
in.
seconds to finish your sentence.
So what I'm saying is, they haven't addressed any of the things. They've talked both sides of their mouth. This isn't what the community originally asked for, and we're counting on you. And I find,
We have questioned hazardous materials, and it is questioned,
Thank you.
not only,
Thank
you
you,
know,
Gordon. Thank
researching it, budgeting it, and containing it, so. Anyone else? Going once.
Twice, John? if you
Going
get up
twice.
here, You're only getting 2 seconds. 2 minutes. Can you come up to the
You
mic?
got-
Who reviewed this? You know what parts of the
Come up to the mic, John, so we can hear you.
John Zubik, Northern Avenue, Cold Spring. The question was, who's going to review this? We're standing Nolis and Nancy Stoner. What agencies, what part of the agencies are going to review this?
Nancy Stoner and her staff at OPRHP will be reviewing, will be compiling all the comments that they receive from different agencies and the public and preparing the FGEIS. So OPRHP.
Her staff part of, is DEC part of her staff? Is that part
No,
of the staff?
DEC is a separate. I expect the DEC will probably have comments of their own.
Is the commission part of this review? The commission, the Taconic State Park Commission?
I could check the EIS to see if they're
I was
included as
curious
an
about that.
agency, but.
All right, that was a question.
State Park Commission
Ready to time me for my statement?
Yeah, you got a minute and 25 seconds.
Okay. We're talking about a major section of the Maurice Hinchy Hudson Valley National Heritage Area here. Certainly one of, if not the most spectacular sections of the Hudson River. The early sailors found out right away it was a river and not a fjord, as it flowed both ways when it came to the stretch between Bear Mountain and Storm King. Then, as in these days, it appears to be extremely difficult to navigate just about anything. In this case, especially blazing a trail. All trails start as a simple path to most easily get from one place to another. Along the way, dead ends become evident and the true ways reveal themselves and become apparent. This current preferred route of HHFT between Cold Spring and around Breakneck is dead in the water. According to the Department of State, if there is an upland alternative that exists, it becomes the preferred route, especially at a fraction of the cost and time. Sailors and swimmers take to the water, and to my knowledge, Jesus was the only one to walk on it. I urge the powers that be to stop bucking the tide and keep the trail on solid ground. Listen to your better preservation conscience. If the hired hands of architects and engineers have to design something, how about putting a proper bike lane along 9D? Or I can't imagine it costing a comparative tremendous amount of money to widen the side of the tunnel some to provide the much-needed bike lane. Or how about an inconspicuous cog trolley just south of the Brook Trail up to Cornishes for the more handicapped? The safe handicap access at Little Stony Point already exists and has been waiting to be enhanced since an 11-year-old was killed there by a train in 1968. I remember listening to Scenic Hudson Mission Express at Dockside fervently with the wind, the sky, and the gap of the mountains by the river as backdrop. It was very inspirational sharing this experience in preservation, aiming at what was believed to be the future endeavors from the threshold of the environmental movement in our area and modeled across the country and around the world for that matter. Long before that, in the 1970s, I also remember writing out my first checks for $20, $25 to support Scenic Hudson along with my premiums to Blue Cross Blue Shield. To this day, I still support all the wonderful pursuits and achievements they have accomplished, Scenic Hudson. I have supported, volunteered, and/or worked for Cold Spring, OSI, Scenic Hudson, Parks, at the Foundry, Fawnstock, Dockside, Little Stony Point to Long Dock Park and Beacon. With regards to this in the river route, they have clearly lost their compass. Scenic Hudson and Parks are ducking behind gifted donkey.
Wrap it up and mail it to us, and send the rest of it to us, honestly. Send it to us via email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you please get that to us in email? I'd love to hear the rest of it. Please, thank you. Something happened to my chair, and I'm getting sore. I thought I was falling over. The chair started
It's the
going.
time of the day, John. It's the time of the day.
So, does anybody else have any comments? If not, we're going to close the public's discussion part of the meeting, and we'll move to vote. Anything else? Nothing? Okay. So what I'm going to recommend is that we include Steve, you on this? We're going to include this cover letter or cover page that we drafted into the report. You can include this with your report, and we'll forward it to Nancy Stoner and New York State Parks. Does anybody have any last-minute changes or discussion? If not, we'll go right into the resolution. Tara, would you like to read the resolution?
Sure. This is a resolution approving the submission of the Town of Philipstown Town Board DGEIS review and comments on the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail. Whereas the Town of Philipstown Town Board has reviewed the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail draft generic environmental impact statement, and whereas the Town Board has agreed to submit written comments per the guidelines of the State Environmental Quality Review Notice of Completion of a draft DGEIS Notice of Public Hearing dated December 4th, 2024, and whereas the Town Board has retained Tim Miller Associates, Inc., to assist in the Town Board review of the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail DGEIS, and whereas the Town Board has reviewed compiled draft comments and questions at workshop meetings held on February 19th, 2025, and February 26th, 2025. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board hereby approves the submission of the Town of Philipstown DGEIS review and comments on the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail with such additions, deletions, or revisions as discussed at the workshop held on February 26, 2025.
Before we vote, or I ask for a resolution, I would like to include the resolution. I believe that would be standard with a roll call vote, that it would be included with the document, but I'd like a copy of this included.
This resolution, you
Yes.
mean with it? Yeah,
With the submission.
that's standard. I usually include the resolution with
Okay.
everything.
So can I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilwoman Farrell,
I vote no, and I will be submitting my own comments. I have a letter.
please. Councilman Angel.
I vote aye.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cotter.
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes, yes.
And I vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's approved 4-1. Judy, it will be documented and submitted with this, that your opinion is included. And I appreciate your opinion, and I respect it, so. And you have every right to submit on your own. Anything else?
We need to adjourn.
One quick note, Jason, if there's been any updates from Jewel as far as, I know they're coming, we have them on the agenda for March 5th.
Yes.
Anything new? I haven't heard any more.
No, I don't think so.
Until they make their present, they've recommended that we don't continue, or don't extend or go into a new contract, that we option to continue the existing one for a 3 to 6 month. But they're coming on March 5th to make that presentation to us, so. All right, nothing else, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I vote aye. Thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.